Good morning, everyone. Welcome to New Orleans, down by the bayou. My name is Steph Dietzel. I'm an engineer on Tableau's web edit team. It is my pleasure to introduce Paul Banoob, one of our amazing Zen masters. Paul runs a Tableau Centre of Excellence at UBS in London, where they provide Tableau Server for the entire global organization, with not just technical excellence, but a focus on user empowerment, community, and training. Paul is also active in the Tableau community with the London Tableau user group, Tableau Public, and his blog, visninja.com. Okay, guys, what do Tableau Server and alligators have in common? Scale, yes. In his talk today, Paul will share tips and tricks for scaling Tableau Server that he learned on his journey from a proof of concept deployment all the way to 13,000 users.
14,000, actually.
14, at least 13,000. If you're as excited as I am to geek out on Tableau Server, please give a warm welcome to Paul Banoob.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I know that you've got tons of different sessions you could be at right at this moment in time, so thank you very much for coming to this one. It means a lot. Quick show of hands, who's first Tableau conference? Excellent, tons of newbies. You guys are going to have an amazing week. There's tons of great sessions, loads of great people to talk to, so I really hope I get you off to a good start. And if I don't, well, just about all of this front row could come up and do this talk much better than me. Anyway, no, Matt, sit down. Now, my 9-year-old daughter, Caitlin, gives me lots of sage words of advice at times like this to calm the nerves speaking in front of large crowds. So last year she said, Daddy, why don't you just imagine everybody sitting on the toilet? Now, I did that, got me through. This year she says, Daddy, if you get nervous, just imagine everybody's doing their best mum and dad dancing. So I think some of you could probably bust some moves from what I'm looking at. And if you do feel the need to get up and dance, Nelson, be my guest man. So I'm Paul. I'm going to talk to you about the UBS Tableau service, and in particular how it relates to scalability. So taking really small things and making them really big. So let's get on with it. So UBS are an investment bank. We were founded in 1862. This is a picture of one of our early offices. We are headquartered out of the beautiful country of Switzerland, famous for its amazing mountain vistas, its fantastic chocolate, and of course the best army knives in the world. We're 100,000 people across the globe, truly global organization. And investment banking being what it is, it's kind of a profitable operation. I think UBS made something like 3.5 billion Swiss francs last year, which gets you a lot of chocolate. And in fact, we had so much money, in particular at the end of the Second World War, so much Nazi treasure, that we actually melted it down and made our own UBS gold bars. Now, how many of your companies have got their own gold bars? None. That's the official UBS bump, which I'm mandated to show. So I run a... That got a really big laugh last year as well. I don't know. It was not supposed to be funny. So I run the Visual Analytics Centre of Excellence based on Tableau. So basically, I look after Tableau for the entire firm, from the configuration of the infrastructure right up to how the service gets marketed. Really good position to be in for a Tableau enthusiast like me. I do a bit of blogging, probably not as much as I should. I do a bit of tweeting, probably too much as I should. So check those out. They're generally about enterprise-related Tableau stuff. So check them out if you want. So in the next 35 or so minutes, we'll talk about scalability. We'll talk about what it actually is and the technical principles behind scalability. We'll talk about infrastructure and some of the considerations that you can have in scaling infrastructure. You might not actually have too many choices, depending on how your organization is set up. And also we'll talk about Tableau architecture and how you can scale that. It's not just the technical aspect of Tableau, it's also the people aspect and the service model and the support. And we'll show you how you to grow that from small to big. And we'll showcase some of the learning initiatives that other people have done at other companies and some things we do at UBS. There's quite a lot of great stuff out there at other organizations. And we'll also talk about the vendor and costs, how you grow your relationship with Tableau, how you consider financial aspects of growing a Tableau service. So Tableau at UBS, this is the UBS Tableau Centre of Excellence, so it's a self-service model. We don't create content. We empower users to create their own visualizations and Tableau content. And I'm not going to talk about this too much because I did a presentation on it last year, but we manage the infrastructure. We talk about visual analytics best practices, lots of training and doctor sessions, really good social community, and also great relationships with the vendor, consultancies, and many of the external Tableau network in this room. So as I said, there's a video of that on my blog from last year. Please feel free to check that out. And if you don't get time, then I'm more than happy to sit down with you and talk you through it. And don't just take my word on Centre of Excellence. There are many people, many experts in the community, of which these are just 8 of my favorites, and some of them are sat in the front 2 rows here. And they are experts on Centre of Excellence and have really achieved some great things developing COEs of Tableau Server at their organizations. So let's talk about scalability. So scalability is an industry definition. It's the capability of a system, network, or process to handle a growing amount of work or its potential to be enlarged to accommodate that growth. Now, I did not attend the proceedings of the second international workshop on software and performance, nor did I read any of its material. What I did do is just rip that from Wikipedia, but it's just as accurate a definition as you'll see in the industry. There's another definition. I prefer this one. Now, you won't see that in any textbooks because I just made it up now. But it's just as applicable to the one above. The difference between a scalable deployment of anything, never mind Tableau, and a non-scalable one is night and day. And getting scalability wrong is a surefire way to turn your dream into a nightmare. Basically, you don't want to be this guy. Because he didn't think about the dimensions of scalability. He didn't think about the scalability of performance, which is that your returns, your benefit does not scale in a linear fashion. You get more benefit from going from 1 server to 2 than you would from 4 to 5, for example. Your returns begin to diminish as you scale up. That's known as Amdahl's law, which is, again, something I just put in there from Wikipedia to make me look academic. It did not work. The scalability of maintenance as well, which is another dimension to consider. As you grow, you inherit more monitoring and administration tasks and all that kind of gubbins, and that can be a big time and resource burn and really brings the need for automation to be part of your scalable deployment. And then we have the scalability of expenditure, anything related to cost. We say a system is cost scalable if you can keep the costs low or maintain the costs while you're increasing the numbers and increasing performance. That's very much affected by other dimensions, so the type of hardware you're using. Maybe you're using different type of licenses, like Windows versus Linux. You might have different contracts in place with vendors and staff and ITOs and other outsourced partners. And also the behavior of the vendor is very important as you grow there, because vendors do some crazy things, like completely changing their licensing model, for example. Sorry, there's some Tableau in the room, isn't there? I didn't realize that. And we think we have avoided being that guy because we've tried to maintain linear growth, and we think we've done it. Going up to 1st of May 2013, that's kind of our proof of concept environment. And we knew we were onto a good thing when our proof of concept environment, which is basically a server that runs under my desk, had 100 desktop users and 300 or 400 server users on that. And people were actually running production content off that server. And I told them not to do it, obviously, but they would say, look, we're getting so much value from this tool, we're going to take the risk. Just please don't kick the power cable out accidentally. And then there's the spike there. That's when we actually got funding. Sorry, I should have explained. The top chart is Tableau Desktop. The second is, the bottom chart is Tableau Server, unique users per month. And the spike there is when we got the funding for the service, and you can see there was a lot of people waiting in the wings. They jumped on the platform. And we think we've continued that linear growth up to the present day. You can see we're now at over 1,500 desktop licenses, and we're now at, as I said, 14,000 monthly unique server users on the platform. So that's the kind of chart that you want to be able to demonstrate to senior management that you're scaling up in a linear fashion. It looks controlled, it looks nice and neat. It's not full of spikes, even though there is one at the bottom there. It's quite hard to completely avoid those. And it's good to demonstrate to senior management, look, we've got an eye on performance and capacity, and we're trying to build out a scalable deployment. That's kind of our history. So we'll buzz over a bit of infrastructure options that you have at the moment. So the main three infrastructure options you have, and you actually might not have a choice, but the first one is on-premise, where all your kit is hosted in your own data center, for example, or a public cloud offering. We saw Francois this morning say that 25% of new deployments are on the cloud. That's quite a big figure. I'm very surprised about that. Or you can have Tableau's software as a service online offering, which I know is growing in popularity as well. All of these have very different considerations when it comes to scalability, very different positionings. In terms of on-premise to software as a service, if you're on-premise, you've got all the control, but it's harder to set up. It's more time-consuming. You go over to software as a service, really, you don't have to worry about anything. The vendor takes care of it all for you. And the same when it comes to support and scale. On the left-hand side and on-premise, you have much more control. As you move towards the software as a service, you gain in scalability, but you lose out in control. For example, a lot of the people here in this room like to dive into server logs, and I'll show you a little bit about how to do that later on. When you're running Tableau online, for example, you don't get the chance to do that, so I'm being told. So you lose out on control, you have to trust more in your vendor. But when we're talking about scalability, definitely that gets the winner's stamp. It is definitely the most scalable option. I think my preference is the cloud, because I don't like to wrestle with infrastructure, and a lot of the issues we've had have been related to infrastructure. But I do like to dive into the server and play about and learn and tune and understand how the application works. So if I was starting again, I'd probably go for a cloud deployment, and indeed UBS is on a cloud journey with many of its applications and lots of its technology into Microsoft Azure, actually. So there's some of the infrastructure options. Now the UBS Tableau environment, which I get a little heart flutter when I just even think about it. So we've got a 48-core environment with a primary and 6 workers. We're actually back on version 10.3 at the moment, unfortunately, but we are going to upgrade soon. That's our production cluster. We have an identical cluster in disaster recovery and another identical cluster in UAT. And then we have a slightly less powerful engineering cluster, which the team can play in. And we have an alpha and a beta environment, should we be testing those environments as well, testing those programs, as well as an admin box. Now, how this slide relates to scalability is it's the scalability of your team. It's the empowerment of your team. So I can't expect my team to be a true center of excellence if I hamstring them by saying, okay, you've got your prod environment, you've got one crappy dev box that you can use. This is our scalable Tableau playground. I demand a lot of my team to be true experts in the application. And what they can do now is, if they want to go and break something with Tableau, they can go and break it. If they want to test a feature, they can go and test it. If they want to participate in a particular alpha, go for it. You can't hamstring your team by, I expect them to be excellent, and then hamstring them by providing them with a sort of constrained environment. So this is our scalable data playground, and it's very important that you give your team the freedom to express themselves and the autonomy to do that. So scaling the environment at the start, you might want to start with a single node or a small cluster if you're on premise. Try and get as much RAM and disk as you can. No one likes a disk-related outage, and RAM is generally cheap. If you're back on a core-based license like we are, then make sure those cores are working hard for you. Try and get the fastest CPUs that you possibly can. And the fourth point is quite important about infrastructure optimizations, especially on an on-premise deployment. You may have to pay for the extras on a cloud deployment, but on an on-premise deployment, most infrastructure teams will have a beast mode that they can enable. If you go and work those relationships and talk to your network team, you might get extra bandwidth. You talk to your VMware team, you might get a better tuned ESX environment. Don't accept the vanilla that they give you. By building relationships and by talking to people and your infrastructure partners, they'll always have a little extra switch that they can flick that might give you a little bit more performance. So try and build those relationships. As you're growing, keep an eye on the extracts, the RAM, the CPU, and I'll show you a bit about how to do that later on. And understand what users are doing, because you will find the incorrect usage and the wrong expectations. Now, I was doing a bit of stakeholder management, buzzing around a few of our seniors, and I talked to one person, and I said, what do you think of Tableau? And he says, I think it's terrible. I thought, that's an unusual response. I don't normally get that. So I'll drill into that a little bit. And he said to me, Paul, what use is an online spreadsheet if it doesn't do pivot tables? And I just went, okay. And he'd been told Tableau was an online version of Excel. So it's of course he's going to hate it. It's not an online version of Excel. So his expectations were completely wrong. And that was kind of around the time people were using phrases like Excel killer and things like that, which just doesn't help the situation. So we had to go on a documentation blitz and actually just set these expectations, correct the perception, and if somebody's coming on expecting it to be a spreadsheet, I don't want them to use the tool. Go and use a spreadsheet. So very important that you understand those expectations and set them at the start when you onboard people. So upgrades, this is a subject that's dear to everybody's heart in this room. Now, the R&D that Tableau put into the product is absolutely fabulous. They're continuously moving the tool on, and you get all sorts of new functionality. You get things like data-driven alerts, revision history, subscribe others, Hyper. And yes, apparently that was the logo for Hyper. I managed to track it down before Tableau acquired them, so it proves technical geniuses, yes, graphic designers. Sorry, Vijay. Just pass that one on to Alan, yeah? Great, loads of great functionality, but data-driven alerts, subscribe others, CPU, increase load on your platform, revision history, Hyper, disk space, all of this might make your startup and restart and maintenance tasks take longer. You don't want to be able to demonstrate to management, hey, look, I've got a perfectly scaled, beautiful environment that's purring along like a Ferrari, but just because I've upgraded the application, I'm now in a capacity nightmare. You've got to be aware of all of the new functionality that comes with each release of Tableau. And this is absolutely critical. Tableau usually releases a scalability document with each version, but not always. So you don't want to just suddenly find yourself in trouble just because you've upgraded the application. So be aware of all the new features and always think of it as what's applicable to you. You don't have to enable these features if they don't work for you. For example, extensions at the moment for us probably doesn't work. I'm probably going to disable that until we feel we're in a position that we can manage it correctly. Subscribe others. I disabled that because we found users were subscribing hundreds and hundreds of people, and it just ballooned our subscriptions. So don't feel pressured to have all this functionality if it doesn't work for you. And I like to think of this in the words of the great philosopher, Dr. Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, who said, you were so preoccupied with whether you could that you didn't stop to think if you should. And that's exactly how I think of Tableau upgrades. You don't have to. Don't feel pressured. Every talk needs a bit of Jeff Goldblum, in my opinion. And monitoring is a very important aspect to having a scalable deployment. So when you're starting out, get used to the admin views that come with the tool. Get involved in the Postgres database if you can. And keep an eye on the things like extracts, viz render times, key KPIs. As you're growing, explore the logs. The logs are actually a much more rich source of information than the Postgres database is, in my opinion, but it can be a bit like herding cats. And leverage the monitoring utilities, of which I will show you a few shortly. And bonus tip, use the expert resources, because a lot of the monitoring utilities, you don't have to worry about writing yourself. It's already done. Folks like these guys, some of them in the front row, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of the stuff here is open source, out there, and if you contact these people, they'll be more than happy to walk you through it. You don't have to worry about complex monitoring tools or writing anything yourself. It's already there. And some of those monitoring utilities, I'll just give you a few screenshots. So we've got TabMon, which is a monitoring utility that I think Tableau wrote. Many of you may have other monitoring applications that run on your infrastructure. In my experience, some of them are not so good. And it's never a bad thing to over-monitor. So TabMon runs on your server, and it collects things like the Java counters and perfmon and CPU and RAM, spits it out into a visualization, a whole set of visualizations, actually. Very, very useful. You've got LogShark, which is a tool that I think was written by Tableau support, and that's actually for you analyzing the server log files. I believe they used to use it when you would send them logs in a support case, for example. And again, that pulls out information from the logs, spits them out into a visualization. Here's one about load statistics. Fairly rudimentary visualizations, but absolute gold dust to an admin. Here's another one about VisQL errors. There really is a whole several dozen different visualizations that it comes with. And again, that's free. You've got Lumberjack, written by my good friend Mark in the front row, and Jonathan McDonald, which is a similar tool to LogShark. There's a visualization about VisQL queries. There's another one about session times. All of these utilities, free, open source. All of this data is sitting there on your server just waiting for you to interrogate. If you're not making use of these kind of the data that's in Postgres and the logs, you're really missing out. This is a tool I've not used yet, Tableau Replayer, which is an interesting one. The point behind Replayer is it allows you to take a section of logs and replay it back into the tool and see what Tableau was doing. So this could be great for content authors, for example. You could take a month's worth of Tableau server logs, throw them back into your test server, and then go to the content author and say, do you realize this is now telling us that nobody's clicked on those two filters that you've put in the bottom right? Why don't you just get rid of them? So I've not used it, as I said, but it seems like something that'd be very useful. It's got a fairly rudimentary interface. I think that's where you spit the information in, and it spits the information out in the form of Tableau visits. You get the picture. But that's another tool that I think is potentially very useful. I'm going to try that one out. And you might have commercial tools like Splunk. We use Splunk for aggregating log files at UBS, and then we form them into a Tableau data source, and we visualize with Tableau, of course. So all of these utilities, apart from Splunk's commercial tool, but many of these utilities, free, open source, ready to go, get stuck into them. Understanding the current picture and how your application is performing is an utterly critical aspect of scalability. You can't scale your environment unless you understand what the situation is. Now, we've talked about the technical aspects, the infrastructure, the application, and such like, but it's not just that. I said at the start, it's people, it's service model, it's support as well. That needs to scale. It's just as important as the application. So at the start, choose an appropriate service model. We've gone for self-serve, which gives users a lot of freedom, a lot of agility, empowers them to use the tool, and it allows my team to concentrate on providing all the other stuff that you saw in our service model. The problem is quality control is very hard because our users are free to publish into production as and when they feel like it, and that means a lot of the stuff on our server isn't so good, and my team spends a lot of time policing after the fact. Or you can go for a fully governed one, governed service model. Danger there is your users don't get an agile experience. Your team might become a report factory just spitting out visualizations for people. That's quite a hard one, resource intensive. You may end up becoming the bottleneck. The good thing is that all the stuff on your server is A1 and looks great and performs well. Or you can go somewhere in between, like some other organizations I know have kind of a bit of a combo where you may give users full self-serve into UAT and dev, but when it comes to prod, that goes through a checkpoint and then released into production by a specific team. I think the combo model is a good one. We've gone for self-serve, and it is the most scalable option. It's the best option for widespread adoption of the tool, but the quality control aspect is pretty hard. And we'll come on to some aspects of quality control soon. And your team also needs to scale. When you're starting off, make sure you're covering the main locations. Make sure we put all our people in London. We got this wrong. We assumed that just because our infrastructure was in London, everyone main global user base would be London. It was actually Asia Pacific. They went crazy with Tableau. And that was a problem for us because when they were using the tool, we were all asleep. No, not literally asleep. Not like, never mind, that didn't work. So cover the main functionality as well. You need to have, there's no point putting the 5 best Tableau desktop people in your team because they want no server. You need to make sure that you can cover all of the different aspects of functionality, APIs, visual analytics, best practices, that kind of thing. And obviously try and keep building that team. And as your usage changes, you'll see from your visualizations who's using the tool where. You may need to put some people on the ground in different regions. And then, as I said, R&D, keep up with that R&D. If Tableau are constantly innovating with the tool, your team needs to innovate. Your team needs to learn those features as and when they hit the tool, because your users will be all over the new features, and you need to be able to support them. And I like to think of my team as a football team. So a football team needs a solid, dependable goalkeeper who can save shots all day long, same as you need somebody who can get through the work in a nice organized, reliable fashion. You might need a football team has a tricky winger who can create chances out of nothing, same as you want somebody in your team who can come up with super imaginative solutions to problems, design great visualizations, and solve these problems in an off-the-wall way. And all of that can be underpinned by a solid leader, a manager, a captain, or me, or someone like that. And standard stuff about key person dependencies. If someone's going to leave and they're your key server guy, Jake's not in the room, actually, so I was telling him, don't get any funny ideas about leaving, please. Then obviously you need to fill those roles. And just circling back to the football analogy for the benefit of people in the audience, okay, and where we're in the States, this is football because it uses a foot and a ball. Okay? Right? There's a clue in the name. I'll explain it to you later, Jeremy, don't worry. So you've got your team, they're in the right places, and your service model's good, but as you're growing, you're going to get more and more and more user requests come in. So efficiency is absolutely critical. So what we do is we make sure that every single user query that it's possible to get goes to the right place. If something's broken, if it's a production incident, get a ticket into ServiceNow so that we can triage it and manage it through our incident management process. Don't bother email me, telling me about it. Get a ticket in. If you need some other help, well, Tableau Doctor, if you can wait a couple of days, book a Tableau Doctor session, sit down with one of the team, it's cool. If you just want a general chat about visualization, then go on our link group chat. Maybe another user will answer the question for you. The point is, it cuts down and it almost eliminates the worst possible way to track user requirements, which is via email. It's a nightmare. So my team barely gets any email because even as we've grown, all of the relevant types of user query go to the correct home so they can be processed in the most efficient way, leaving the team not worried about managing the inbox. Very important and very good to keep that workload efficiency. And automation, again, as we talked about that earlier, is very important for scaling. So when you're starting off, make sure you're automating general housekeeping, maintenance, common tasks like failback, failover, and restores. As you grow, automate the amalgamation of the log files with some of those utilities. You might want to put Postgres somewhere else so you can keep a richer history of Postgres data. And as you're growing, especially if you're on-premise, you'll be upgrading and installing Tableau Server left, right, and center. You've got to get that down to a 1 or 2 click operation, otherwise you just will not survive. And the same with other, if you're on-premise, the same with other aspects of server builds like drivers and other such like. Very important. And there's tons of ways to do it. All the different command lines, TSM, tab admin, APIs. And as I've kept saying, it's all out there in the community already. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So users, now I love my users. They're absolutely wonderful. In fact, here's a live picture of one of them. Hang on. Look at all those windows. What's he doing? He's overloading my schedules. He's using full, not incremental. He's got nightmare calculations going on. He's going crazy with the API. He's not cleaning up after himself. He doesn't care, sir, that your extract does not run so long as his extract does. Madam, he does not care that your visualization takes 2 minutes to load, so long as his does. He's gaming my system, and he will game your system left, right, and center. Oh, please don't tweet this slide, by the way. He cannot be trusted. You can't trust your users. We got this really badly wrong. We trusted our users with best practice documentation and such like, oh, when you don't need your visualization, clean up after yourself, forget it. It's not going to happen. I've got a few motivational tools that I like to use with these users. Some of them are fairly effective, but if they fail, then I bring out the ultimate motivator to try and make Tableau Server great again, and he generally gets the job done. But there is a solution at hand, and housekeeping is the solution. So we have content. If it's not accessed for 100 days, it is toast. It is gone. We're binning those old subscriptions. We're smashing those AD groups and empty projects. We just do not tolerate the junk on the server anymore. Departed users, if you leave the firm and you haven't moved that content onto a different owner, I'm deleting it. And we took at least 3 years or 4 years before we put this in place, and that was a really bad thing, because when we did delete the content, we deleted over 50% of the content on our server overnight with not a single complaint. There was content that hadn't been accessed for 3 years, and people like Mark there is a very big advocate of housekeeping, and you know the importance of that. You can't trust your users. They won't clean up after themselves, and when you're building an enterprise deployment, you have to scale. In terms of scalability, you've got to sweep the decks. So we've talked about the technical aspects. We've talked about the team, the people, the service model. Now, it's also really important to build the data literacy of your user base. As more and more people are using Tableau in your organization, it figures that more and more people should actually understand about analytics and data in general, and using Tableau will help that. But you very much do need to help them on their way. So improving the data literacy at the start, get a community going, get that, use your social tool at your organization. We started our social platform right when we started our POC. It's a slow burner, but it does work. Provide all those best practice documentations at the start and set out the rules of engagement as well. You're in charge of this service as you build it. Don't tell your users, I'm not going to accept you uploading stuff with sheet 1 and dashboard 1. That's going to get pulled down. Demand excellence from these people. And then as you grow, you will see the power users and the champions start to spring up in your organization, the ones who just, the light bulb goes off on their head and you think, you get this, you love this. Bring those people back into your team. I mean, I've got several what I call UBS Tableau champions, and they almost act as an extension of my team. All they want to do all day is more Tableau. So I give them more Tableau. We take them to events, we bring them in on webinars and privileged meetings with the vendor, give them all the juicy Tableau they can handle. And as a payback for that, they'll go and spread my message. They'll do local user groups and training and such like. Those are the key people that will seed the usage of Tableau at your organization. But beware cultural challenges as well. I'm sure you've all had it where you're trying to teach people to do the right thing, and most people go, yeah, okay, text tables versus visualization. I like the visualization better. Occasionally you come across somebody where it's just like, it's almost a waste of time. And you have to decide how much time you apply to the lost causes, because unfortunately there are some. So we've tried to use all the learning aspects at UBS, we've tried to make them scalable. We've tried to cater for different audiences. So we have our general community, which has got blogs and competitions and challenges and posts and best practice and training and all of that good stuff that many of your communities will have. And then if you narrow the pyramid a little bit, we've got a training syllabus that we run, which is 8 modules, runs every 2 months. We've trained a couple of thousand people on that. It's free to attend and instructor-led. Narrowing the pyramid a little bit more, we've got Tableau doctor sessions and a whole lot of doctor-related stuff, live events and blog posts showcasing the most interesting doctor sessions that the team has faced. And then you narrow it even more, and we've got the executive level training, which is focused on very senior leaders who probably wouldn't want to spend 8 modules learning about Tableau, but they are interested. So what that does is we can demonstrate to our management, when management say, hey, you do a lot of training. No, we don't just do training. We show that we can cater for different audiences at different levels of the bank and provide them a different a different learning experience based on their seniority or where they are in the organization. And all of this helps to build data literacy. And really, we're a little bit behind on this because there's some really industry-leading initiatives that have been done by other people. So Fiona Gordon, when she was at Commonwealth Bank of Australia, did a fantastic data playbook initiative, which takes her users from rookie to rockstar, going through a series of structured learning items. And what I like about this is it starts with intro training, and at the end, you come out as a certified pro. So you've got a genuine, tangible professional qualification that comes out of the back of that. And Fiona's actually presenting about this on Thursday. Achievement Unlocked is the name of her talk. So if you want to explain about find out more about how she's done that, then please go along and say it. I think it's fantastic work. And also honourable mention to Javita and the team at Jaguar Land Rover, who've done a similar kind of analytics power user program, not just focused on Tableau. You see, there's RapidMiner in there as well and other tools. Again, in a phased, systematic, structured approach to get the data literacy of the people who'll be consuming Tableau visualizations up. Because often, the desktop person might be data literate. They create a dashboard. It arrives on the desk of somebody else who's very data illiterate, and they have a bad experience, not because the dashboard's badly designed, but just because they don't really understand it. And I'll also give another honourable mention to the folks at JLL, Simon Beaumont, Paul Chapman, who've done some superb work in building analytics capabilities and improving data literacy in their organisations as well. And this is kind of what we really want to achieve. Okay, we talked about the technical aspects and the people and the team and and data literacy, but also Tableau play a very important part in the growth of your service. The vendor relationship is very important. So when you're starting out, you might start with something like standard support, but don't be scared to lay out your expectations. So you're probably paying for a certain SLA, but SLA, schmesLA is what I say. You know, it's what works for you. And if you talk to Tableau, you gradually will find a happy medium, a happy path for this type of support that works for your organization. And they're more than willing to listen. As you grow, you might want to consider the extended or the premium support offerings, and also get Tableau in for more. At UBS, they come in for proof of concepts with big user teams. They come in for strategic onboarding, for training. They spend time with our devs, with our execs, with our product managers. They come in, they give us so much. And look for proactivity. Don't just be sitting there thinking, oh, I wish Tableau came in and did more for me. Get out there and say, you should be coming in and offering me more stuff. Like Tableau, on my case, all the time saying, can I come in and do this? Can we come in and do that? Can we enable your users in a different way? Look for that proactive vendor relationship. But, they're a vendor, they're a sales team as well. We've had some commercial challenges, we've had some enthusiastic sales, and also if you ask for more, don't be surprised when it starts putting demands on you. So my customer success manager, who does a fantastic job for us, is regularly emailing me saying, Paul, where's that document you said you would have with me on Wednesday? Do you want this to happen or not? You're the one who asked for it. Do you want it to happen? And it's me holding her up. So it does put demands on you. The more you ask, the more you'll have to give. And one of the examples of what Tableau come to us with, this is our overall service capability that Tableau provided to us. And this is where they see us in the landscape of other customers. This isn't our opinion. This is their opinion of UBS's deployment. And as you can see, there's plenty of red. There's plenty of areas that they think we're not doing a great job on, and they think that we need to improve. And they're right. So then they can compare this with other customers. And obviously, their objective and our objective is to get to an all-green state. We'd love to do that. But it's great that they can come to us and say, look, Paul, this is where we believe you've got yourself positioned amongst all of our customers, and we want to get you to an all-green state where you can be one of the best customers around. So if you're not getting this kind of thing, if you don't know what Tableau think of your deployment, then you need to find out. You need to have some map like this where you can then understand the areas that you need to work on. Or sorry, that Tableau think you need to work on. And the overall message is don't be scared to ask for more, because Tableau are, in my opinion, hands down the best vendor I've ever worked with for enablement, for understanding their users, for wanting you to succeed. And if you ask for more, they will give it, and you might really be surprised by just how much the Tableau team will give you. And as we've grown our deployment, the vendor relationship is super, super strong. And don't get me wrong, we have our moments, but it's a super strong relationship. Now, we'll close out with money, or if you want, you can use one of the colloquialisms that you see on the screen there. Again, pulled from Wikipedia, and I would have to question the data accuracy because I've never heard anybody in the UK refer to money as cabbage or clam. I thought that would be funnier. So costs at the start, standard stuff, understanding your TCO. But as you grow, understand the competing tools. As Tableau grows in your organization, other tools will also have ability to compete. As not just the tools, but the alternative platforms. You may get pulled into an MD's office one day, and she might say to you, tell me, are we going to save money if we go to Power BI? Now, answer that. You've got to have this in a slide deck sitting on your SharePoint somewhere that you can pull it up at short notice. The same with if we move to Tableau Online, are we going to save money? You've got to have that coming off the top of your head. And what are other companies doing as well? You'll find that out in this week. The more people you talk to, you will find tidbits of information that will save you money. So that's get talking to people, understand people's deployments. And also beware the competition. As I said, as your Tableau usage grows, other companies will come in and probably try and undercut and try and take a slice of that pie. And then the last two things, the hitmen and the uninformed. Now, these are people that you very much need to be trying to track down and be aware of, because for some the hitmen, for example, there will be people in your organization who want to take you down, who want to take Tableau down. They'll have an agenda for whatever reason it is. They want Tableau out in favor of another tool. I can see some heads nodding in the audience, so maybe you've experienced that. Make sure you know who these people are and try and build a relationship, try and change perceptions, try and get them on side. And actually, worse than the hitmen are the uninformed, the people who are spreading nonsense about Tableau, not because they want to take it down or have an agenda, but just because they don't understand what's going on, or they've got the wrong information. They might think that Tableau is way more expensive when it's actually cheaper than another tool. They just don't know. So try and track these people down. Again, talk to them, correct their perceptions. Very important, because they can both, especially the uninformed, can do a tremendous amount of damage across your enterprise as you're trying to build your Tableau mission. Now, what did we get wrong? Well, we got plenty wrong. At the start, our onboarding was poor. We didn't really have training going at the start. We expected everybody to be self-learners, like many of you are in the audience. And in reality, they weren't. And we didn't do anything on automation and housekeeping, and that was a real pain point. As we grew, we never really got things like gamification and competitions and the data playbook going, so the data literacy levels were pretty low. And because of the self-serve model, content quality was pretty ropey and still remains quite bad to this day. It's quite a resource-intensive effort to fix that. But we still think Tableau is the best self-service visualization tool on the market. Our mission is to help people see and understand their data using the best, easy-to-use, agile tools that are out there. The vendor direction is absolutely critical in this, because if Tableau stop innovating, stop being industry leaders in usability, and stop wanting to enable your success, we'll change. We'll go somewhere else, because we want to use the best possible tools. At the moment, we still see Tableau is the best self-service visual analytics tool, and 14,000 users can't be wrong. Just a few key takeaways. We've talked about scalability, so understand the technical aspects of scalability and what it actually means. Choose your platform wisely, indeed, if you have a choice. Learn Tableau, learn the different myriad ways you can deploy the application and performance tune the application and how to monitor it. Put some effort into creating that scalable team structure, that scalable service model, and then work on the data literacy, maybe using some of the examples that you've seen here. And evolve that vendor relationship. As I said, our relationship with Tableau is very different now to when we started, and they've grown and scaled up along with us. So quite a lot of information in there, and some of it glossed over, but I'm very confident that if you take some of these tips away, then you'll be less like him, more like her. Thank you. Okay, any questions? I don't know if is a mic going. Is there a mic going around? I didn't ask that. Yeah, it's just come in, sir.
Hi, Paul. I had a question about your engineering environment, because you have 3 activations with your production, and then, so did you go to Tableau and buy a second license key just for an engineering environment?
We bought a very small 10-user license for the engineering environment.
Okay, so it's a user-based key, makes sense.
Hey, Paul, I'm Swain from Nike. I'm curious about how you judge user experience. Do you have some key performance? Like, what to you indicates whether your server is performing well or not, like the user experience?
Generally, average viz render times. If it starts to creep above 5-7 seconds, something like that, we think there's something wrong. We're also looking at very much the CPU utilization across the cluster is a key metric to look at as well, because when things have gone wrong, we've seen flatlining CPU. So average CPU consumption is a very good indicator of a capacity problem.
And has your scaling been smooth? You're at 48 cores now. I'm curious to know, have you gone just sort of 8? I mean, like.
Yeah, pretty much we've done that. We've looked at the usage chart and seen the numbers going up and seen the performance maybe starting to tail off. It takes a long time to get things approved at UBS, so we have to start those processes early. And generally, we've been able to upgrade the cores pretty much in the nick of time as things have tipped over. So it's all about tracking that usage chart with the KPIs as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let's go back and forth. Actually, I think you covered it, but so when you're doing your monitoring, like, are you seeing, like, does your VisQL process hang on memory? Like, that's what's happening to us when we see performance issues. It'll just,
Yeah, we've seen that. We've seen the server be, VisQL in particular is quite memory hungry,
Yeah.
and we've seen it have some problems. It's improved though in later versions.
And the other thing is around your governance for your content. Like you said, 5 to second viz delivery times. How much playing cop are you doing on that, your team? Are they just constant auditings? Do you have rules set up that you can't have like a background process that runs in this amount of time? You just cut those off and X them off
Yeah,
the
we'll
server?
cut off extracts that run longer than an hour. We just have to do that.
A nasty viz that takes 5 minutes to deliver. Do you work with the people, or do you
Yeah,
just
we absolutely work with the people, unless it's causing a problem, because we have seen visualizations. We actually saw one visualization. In fact, it was one calc, took down the entire cluster, 48-core cluster. It was so bad, it was great. I wish I wanted to. It had hundreds of nested if-else statements in it, just going like, if I'd printed it out, it would probably stretch the length of this conference center. And as soon as the dude hit go on that, it flattened every single worker in CPU. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
So Paul, you obviously have a lot going on in a given day between your server administration, trainings, talking to your users, everything you do in the Tableau community. What tips do you have for keeping your schedule straight, making sure that you're getting everything done that needs to be done?
The main tip is that efficiency of support. So there's nothing worse than opening your inbox and seeing 200 emails from users. You've got to get those requests into the right place. That's an absolute must. Another tip is really embracing your internal community. So I love to read what you guys produce in the Tableau community. And I love to write blogs on our internal community, maybe just linking to them to show our users, hey, go and see what this person has put out there. So that enthusiasm, I love sitting down with a cup of tea in the morning and just spending 10 minutes on the Tableau community. And that kind of builds the nice, warm, fuzzy feeling for the day. You know, it's nice. But ultimately, you've got to have enthusiasm for the tool. And we all in this room absolutely love the tool. We love visual analytics. We love Tableau's mission. So you're nothing without enthusiasm, which brings me on to that thing about power users and champions, getting the most out of the people who are like-minded like you and almost making them part of your service. Ma'am?
Hi, so I was wondering, what was your kind of user to core, growth track? How many users did you get to before you saw that you had to add some more stuff?
Yeah, it's not an explicit user number. It all depends on the KPIs of viz render times and performance and CPU stats across the server. Because you can pile 500, 1,000 users on a server. They might not be doing a whole lot. You can pile a smaller number of users on the server, and they might be really intensive users that have got a real drilling into the underlying data and downloading data. So it all depends what users are doing, and that's actually quite a difficult one to measure because a user in Tableau doesn't necessarily always do the same thing. And so it's not just the user numbers, it's very much a combination of a series of KPIs that determine whether we should pull the ripcord on an upgrade. Mike?
How do you handle connection? Here.
Sorry.
So how do you handle connections to different data sources? Do you let users embed their credentials or do you create service accounts?
All the responsibility for data sources is on the users because they own the content, they own the data sources, same as they own the visualizations. For that particular question, embedding their own personal credentials in a data source is exceptionally bad practice. So if we see somebody who's connecting to a data source, you get that out the logs as well. Using a personal ID, we'll ping them and say, you really should create a service account for that. That's bad practice. But ultimately, I won't be the one paying the price for that. That would be them that would be paying the price. So if I see that, I'll kind of let it go, but I will advise that that's not a general IT good thing to do. But if they leave it, it's not going to really impact my server. It's just when that dude leaves the firm, then it's going to break that visualization for the rest of his team, or his or her team. So yeah, that's how we do that. Mike, you had a question? Is it coming down this way?
Hello.
Yeah.
over here.
Oh, hi, sir.
You mentioned trying to decide between self-service and the combo is pretty much the best route. How do you work with the business, your customers, to ensure they help you maintain the right staffing on your team to support them?
Dude. It's question of the year, that one. Now this is interesting because users at UBS, traditionally the business has sucked in resource from IT and made demands and not put their hands in their pocket. That's changing due to some different management we have in our area. It's now, I think the phrase I heard was no money, no honey, basically. If you're going to be bringing on 2,000 users onto my platform, you may well want to be putting your hands in your pocket. And we do that. We look at new use cases. And if someone comes to me and says, I think I'm going to bring 1,000 users every month on your platform, I'll say, look, we need to talk cash. The fact we've got such a great relationship with our users is that a number of our business units have actually volunteered that cash up front without us even asking. And that's all down to the fact that we've built such great relationships with them. So that does help. But ultimately, yeah, you have to, things have to be paid for. And people are beginning to see that more now. Randy? Oh, sorry, Mike, you've been waiting. Sorry, Randy.
Just a follow-up on that. Do you do chargebacks to your business, or do you just take that money up front as a
There's no formal chargeback model at the moment. We've been discussing it for a while, and we just can't work out the right way to do it. So if anyone can tell me, I'm all ears. It's not easy. Mike, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, Paul, so you touched on being able to deflect questions about other vendors, other tools, and the Power BI question came up, and I don't know how much you'd want to get into this, but I get an email at least once a month from one of my colleagues across in another company, wherever. Hey, I know you did an analysis, Power BI versus Tableau. Do you still have that? Can you send it to me? Then I'll send them that, and I'll send them 6 or 7 other links that I Googled right away. But I wonder what maybe your top 2 or 3 bullet points are, if you care to share those, of how of Tableau value versus Power BI value. I mean, I know what I say, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, and as we're moving into Azure, we're getting that challenge asked all the time. Why don't you just use Power BI in the cloud? I think the top thing I would say, and we've done the same, we've sent them the functional comparisons and the cost comparisons, but what the absolute imperative aspect is, it has to be apples with apples. So many a time people will say, Power BI or another tool costs this, Tableau costs this, and then when you look into it, actually what you're getting, what you get with Tableau is you get all the functionality. With other tools, the particular example I was thinking was MicroStrategy. Yes, this person had sent me this thing that indicated MicroStrategy was cheaper, but when you actually bolt on all the relevant functionality, it wasn't. So, in fact, it was much more expensive. So these comparisons have to be apples to apples comparisons, and I think that's probably the top thing I would say. Sorry, I'll have to push your...
I'll go. One here?
Hi there, Emily from the University of Minnesota.
Hi.
So you talked about housekeeping, and in addition to workbooks that aren't used over, I think you said 100 data or so, do you also delete data sources? And also, it sounded like your users were okay with deleting old content, but I can't imagine that our users would be okay with that. So what are suggestions for maybe saving copies of things? Or?
Yes, we do delete data sources as well, and I thought we'd get complaints, but really, if I'm deleting content and there's somebody, and nobody has looked at it in a year, then that author's going to have a serious justification to come back to me and tell me to keep it. As we delete it, we tell those users there is no backup of this. Secretly, there is a backup, but we tell them because that would be suicide doing that. But as I said, tens of thousands of dashboards went overnight and not one person complained. Say again? Oh, it's just a standard TS back file that we just chuck off to an archive. We've improved that process with Mark Wu's help from Apple, and what we do now is when the 100 days process runs, first off it'll give them a warning. It'll say, right, we've moved this content into an archive project on the server. It's going to get binned in a week. Click here on this email if you want to recover it. That automatically recovers it. If it doesn't recover it, we say, we've binned it, and in the email, we take the TS, we take the package workbook, strip out the data, send them the TWB file in the email as well, so if so they never actually lose it. And yeah, so we try and make it a little bit user-friendly.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Charles.
Great talk.
Thank you, mate.
So you mentioned that you're on 48 cores at the minute, right? It looked about 18 months ago when you last upgraded. So you must be getting to the point where you're close to maybe adding something. So with that, are you looking at remaining to the core-based pricing, or are you going to move to the subscription model? And if so, what's the lever to make that change?
Hard one for me to answer because we're in commercial negotiations with Tableau at the moment, have been for some time, so I can't go into the details. There are advantages to the subscription model, getting away from cores, getting away from a dependency on hardware. For example, at the moment, our extracts take a long time because we're constrained with the number of backgrounders we'd run. I'd love to be able to just chuck hardware at the problem, and that would be a benefit of moving on to that licensing model. At the moment, we're trying to make the numbers meet. What has happened, though, is we have added new instances. This is all one global cluster, or it was one global cluster shared by the whole firm. There has been a couple of user teams who have come forward with the cash and said, actually, we want and they've been able to justify the reasons, we want our own separate instance. So for our absolute key top customers, we're spinning up a couple of separate instances. So,
do you have any tips or tricks for initial adoption and training, whether it's for your company or for a new business unit, just getting people excited and started on Tableau?
Yeah, I mean, that social community, spin that up on day one, because that takes, a lot of people go into build a Tableau Centre of Excellence, and then they think, hey, I want a community, I'll just create my community. But a community takes so long, it's such a slow burner. Set it up at day one when you're just testing the application. Use that community to track, to seed out who's going to be your trial users, and then track their responses. And then when you identify those seeders that could be everywhere in the globe, use them. Say, hey, can you help spread my message for me? So you kind of do it like it spreads like a virus in that respect.
What do you say to, or how do you manage, I guess, IT or regulators, people that might balk at the volume of bad data that can exist in kind of self-service model?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's true, that there is bad data and there is bad vizzes out there, and it attracts the attention of people, but it's all built into how my service is approved by IT, risk management and things like that, it's a sucky answer, but it's not my fault. You know, if somebody uploads data sources that are bad, and that has a knock-on effect to whatever business, nobody's going to come and kick my butt, but they're going to kick the other person's butt. And it doesn't really solve the problem, it just kind of deflects it. What you really want is a central governance team that has got an overall responsibility for what's authoritative and data quality. There isn't one at the moment, unfortunately. So it's a challenge.
Hi.
Hi, sir.
This is Ravi. How many sites do you have on your server, and how many server administrators do you have? Site administrators for those sites.
We don't like sites. We only have 3. So on our global cluster, we have production, UAT, and test. So we use sites for environments. I don't like giving sites to individual business units or teams who do that at the project level, because I think site proliferation can be an absolute nightmare. I've seen a lot of organizations have hundreds of sites, and then eventually they're desperately trying to collapse them all down into a few. So, and in terms of team size, I've got a very small team. I've got 3 people that report to me globally, so it's a small team, and that hence why scalability is so important, because in a big enterprise, the axe of redundancy is always a threat, and if you're running a team that's got fat around the edges, those people are going to get cut. So having a very lean, efficient team doesn't completely protect you from the axe, but it gives you some insurance.
So your site admins and the server admins are all in the same team?
Yeah, we don't have site admins. They're all server admins, my team.
Thank you.
No problem. Ma'am, 1 second, it's behind you.
So what kind of features do you like to see Tableau add their products?
What kind of features do I? Well, I like to see things that make enterprise management better. It's traditionally been a weak area, but it's moving on quite nicely with things like TSM and Linux and such like. If you wound back, say, 5 years, the enterprise person was not particularly well catered for Tableau. It was very much all about desktop functionality. So anything that helps my team manage the environment better is always a good thing. I think we've got time for just one more. All right.
Do you mind a second question?
Go for it, Mike.
So Tableau's starting to get functionality in the online on the server, editing workbooks on par with the desktop tool. We've started to move towards gearing new users to the server and being able to edit online first, and then as they need the desktop functionality, then move them that way. I'm just curious what your organization is doing, or if you've thought about that.
Yeah, we opened web edit to everybody, and it was a nightmare. I mean, I'm got very frustrated with the iterative addition of functionality to web edit. I mean, I tell people at Tableau, just tell me when it's parity, because the people who you direct to, we're on 10.3. When I direct people to use web edit, it's 10 minutes before they come back to me saying, what's this? What's this all about? I can't do this, I can't do that. Why can't I do this? Why can this guy with desktop do stuff that I can't do? It's not a great experience. So I think the sooner we get absolute parity, and I know it's quite close now, then firing people into the browser-based experience would be something I'd love to do much more of. So, should we close it there, Steph? I think we're pushing. Well, we're just 1 minute over time, so let's do that. So anyway, thanks very much for listening, guys. Cheers.